Hi guys, for the month of June, the Sustainable Training Method team have set a challenge of spine segmentation for 5 to 10 minutes a day. When we address the health and longevity of the spine, we want to ensure that we can build awareness and control of how we actually move the spine. That being, if you think about the spine, it's not just one joint, not just one bone, but it's many joints. So each vertebrae is its own joints. It has its own mechanoreceptors, it has its own ability to move. What I find in today's world is a lot of people struggle to actually show good control or have awareness of how to actually control the spine fully. So in the long term, having the inability to fully articulate or move your spine the way it should can lead to joint dysfunction, physical pain and injuries from any type of activity that might have a high demand over the spine, which is why we want to ensure for the health and longevity of the spine we can actually move it to its fullest capability for what we then use it for. So to begin the practice, we're going to run through a tactile segmentation. Before we go through that though, I want to demonstrate what is commonly seen in a lot of practices with this exercise. So Elena, if you demonstrate a full flexion, full extension and do a few reps. So this is like a global way of doing a movement, which is great, excellent, rest there. However, it doesn't demonstrate control of actually moving individual joints, which is what I want the focus of this exercise to be. So for the setup, Elena's got her hips above the knees, shoulders above the hands. At the moment, spine is in neutral, but we're going to begin in full extension. So everything is sunk down, right? Now it begins with a pelvic tilt. So from about here, I'm going to use my finger to walk up her spine, and she's going to undo the pelvic tilt and then gradually flex vertebrae by vertebrae as I walk my fingers slowly up her spine. Notice this isn't moving yet, she's really focusing hard just to articulate and segment where she feels contact from my finger. Coming up to mid-thoracic, and we'll be working our way to the neck, from which she finishes by tucking the chin. Then staying in this position, you can work your way down the spine, but I find when you're first learning a practice like this one, it's a lot easier to start from bottom upwards. So that's how I would advise, but as you get used to practicing this, by all means, challenge yourself and work back down. So from this position, then what you want to do is reverse it. So I'll press my finger here, she'll tilt the pelvis, and then begin to extend vertebrae by vertebrae. So I'm at mid-lumbar, upper lumbar, lower thoracic, mid-thoracic, and upper thoracic to cervical. Excellent. So this is your tactile segmentation. So I'm going to cover a few of the common conversations that I see with this exercise. The first main one is using the shoulder blades when you're working in this particular area of the segmentation. So commonly, if you show protraction, this would be pushing against the floor with the arms, spreading the shoulder blades apart, and then the opposite would be retraction, which is to actually sink down a bit with the chest, but you're bringing the shoulder blades together. So we actually, for this, want to try and keep the shoulder blades in a stable position and try to avoid your best to actually get them involved when you're going through this segmentation. There's nothing wrong with using the shoulder blades to protract and retract going through this. However, for the purpose of this exercise, we want to be able to demonstrate how well we can control just using the spine without anything else. So I will show you a bad rep as I'm walking my fingers up. I'll start from mid-thoracic, and as you notice, she's sunk down, the shoulder blades have started to come together, and I'll reverse it as I'm working my way up, she's excessively pushing against the floor with the arms, spreading the shoulder blades apart. And this is what a good rep will look like. So I'm going to speed up working my fingers up, but pay attention when I get to this region here. Eleanor's trying her best as she goes into flexion not to now spread the shoulder blades apart, not to push her hands against the floor. And then I'll show one from flexion to extension, so I'll work my way up the spine quickly. And now when we're getting to the thoracic, Eleanor's doing her best not to actually sink down too much with the sternum or pull the shoulder blades together. Excellent. Now another very typical compensation I see is moving of the hips and shoulder blades. So Eleanor's just going to demonstrate what will happen. Generally I see hips will move forwards with the shoulders, and then the reverse can happen as well as you're going through this. This can happen anytime through the movement, so just try to be a little mindful of keeping your hips stacked above your knees and your shoulders above your hands. And then the final compensation, which I see a lot, is bending of the elbows. If you have a lot of difficulty to eliminate bending of the elbows, then what I would suggest is probably try to use something like parallettes or dumbbells, something which you can grip onto. What it does is it takes away the demand of wrist extension, which could be part of the problem. So then try to practice in this position. Like I said, you could use parallettes, dumbbells, you could even use yoga blocks to place your hands on. So what you've probably found when working with the tactile segmentation for a few repetitions is there's particular areas where you have difficulty actually moving. So in order to get a bit more localized and specific with those particular areas that you struggle, this will be the next exercise that you can introduce. So this is hinge point training, and I'm going to demonstrate with the lumbar region. So what I'm going to do is place my hand underneath Eleanor's lower back area. Alright, and I'm going to place two fingers between two vertebrae, and I'm going to put pressure onto those. So if you imagine two discs, I'm pressing up against those discs, and Eleanor, what I want you to think is that my fingers are like a scale. So now what you're going to do is just put pressure slowly where you feel my fingers. Putting more pressure into that scale without moving anything else. And then slowly remove that pressure. So you can't see much happening in the video, but the intent here is just now to focus on alternating for a few repetitions between flexion and extension. So slowly putting pressure into my fingers, hold for a few seconds, and then slowly removing that pressure. At home, if you don't have someone to work with, you can use something small like a cork, or I've got here a clip. Anything small really, which can give you a bit of feedback. When working with this, it can be really difficult not to involve other parts of the body. So now we're just going to demonstrate a few bad reps to give you an example. Now, when Eleanor goes into flexion, where she's putting pressure into my fingers, this would be an example of a bad rep. Lifting the head up, tensing up the neck, lifting maybe the chest up. There might be a bit of movement in pelvis, and then when she goes into extension, where she's taking pressure away, again lifting the rib cage up so it flares up. You can see this tension in the neck. There might be a bit of pelvis movement as well. Really try to avoid that and do your best just to localize the movement where you feel the pressure. Like I said, if you're working on your own, place something underneath your back. What I would advise is just do a few repetitions in particular areas where you feel you need it. Sometimes it helps to work where you have a lot of success and then work where you have less success to understand how to develop this. So how I would advise practicing this is begin, do a few repetitions of tactile segmentation. If you don't have someone to work with, like I did with Eleanor, using my fingers to work up and down the spine, record yourself. It's very useful to actually record yourself to be able to see what you're doing versus what you feel. You'll probably notice there's actually a big difference between what you think you're doing and what you see on camera. And this will give you a bit more feedback where you need to particularly work on segmenting. Also, after you've done a few repetitions of tactile segmentation, then if you're on your own, use something that you can place, something small you can place underneath those particular areas, a few repetitions, extending, flexing, putting pressure, like I said, into the object, and then slowly removing the pressure. Hold for a few seconds, do a few repetitions in a particular area, then maybe change, work in another area, and then return back for a few repetitions of the tactile segmentation. And that should take you 5 to 10 minutes of your time.